They did not bring Anya Bracken to the trial blade to discover whether she had lied. They brought her because the blade had already been told what to do with her. She knew it the moment they tied the black judgment ribbon around her throat. The ribbon was soft, lighter than chain, but the word stitched across it weighed more than iron. TRAITOR. The moonlit court saw the word before they saw her face. That was how Stormholt liked its justice, clean enough that no one had to look too closely at the person underneath. Anya stood barefoot on the cold moonstone floor, wrists bound in white oath cord. Her plain gray servant dress still stained with smoke from the Eastern healing yard. She had spent the night carrying water to wounded pack guards after the gate fire. She had held a dying boy's head while he choked on ash. She had torn strips from her own sleeves to bind a soldier's arm before the healers arrived. By dawn, the council called her absence suspicious. By noon, they called her silence guilt. By moonrise, they brought her before the royal Alpha. High Judicator Alaric Mavrin stood beside the white bone altar, with the trial blade laid across both palms. He was a narrow man with silver-threaded hair, calm eyes, and the careful voice of someone who had never needed to shout because law shouted for him. His black robes were stitched with old judgment phrases in moon thread. The blade cannot be bribed. Truth leaves a mark. The innocent endure. Anya had polished those words into the council doors for 6 years. She had watched men touch the trial blade and scream. She had watched women burn before they finished saying they were innocent. She had watched noble witnesses lower their eyes while servants were carried away smoking from the hand. The court called that proof. Anya had learned to call it convenient. Alaric lifted the blade. It was silver-black oath metal, long and narrow, with moonfire trapped beneath the edge. Its handle was wrapped in white wolf hide, darkened by generations of palms. Every child in Stormholt was taught that the first royal Alpha forged it to burn lies from flesh. Anya looked at the blade and wondered how many lies had learned to wear fire first. Anya Bracken, Alaric said. Oath-bound servant of the Eastern household. You stand accused of opening the war corridor to enemy riders, carrying secret words beyond the oath wall, and betraying the Stormholt pack during a night of attack. Her mouth was dry. I carried water, the court murmured. Alaric turned slightly, as if granting pity to a dull child. You were found in the Eastern corridor, because men were bleeding there. You had ash on your sleeves, because the tower burned. No noble witness confirms your purpose. Anya's fingers tightened. There, the true charge. Not betrayal. Unwitnessed service. A servant could spend all night keeping others alive, but if no noble saw the mercy, the court could turn it into treason before breakfast. At the far end of the hall, Royal Alpha Alaric Stormholt sat on the black wolf throne beneath silver antlers and storm banners. He was tall even seated, dark-haired, broad-shouldered, with a scar along his jaw and pale gray eyes that gave away nothing. His black battle leather still bore marks from the eastern breach, and his wolf shadow lay behind the throne, huge and restless, its ears pinned low. The shadow was not watching Anya. It was watching the blade. Alaric finally spoke. Did you open the corridor? No, Majesty. Did you carry words beyond the oath wall? No. Did you betray this pack? Anya lifted her chin. No. Alaric held out the trial blade. Then touch judgment. The nobles leaned forward. That was the part Anya hated most. Not their hatred. Their hunger. They wanted fire because fire made doubt unnecessary. She looked at Alaric. If it burns me, will you ask when it learned my name? The hall went still. Alaric's eyes sharpened. What does that mean? Alaric answered before she could. The guilty often try to place suspicion on judgment before judgment speaks. Anya kept her eyes on the Alpha. A blade can only burn what it has been taught to call false. Something moved across Alaric's face. Not merce. Attention. Alaric stepped closer. Enough. Put your hand on the metal. Anya looked down at her bound wrists, then at the blade. She had been oath-bound since she was 14, bound to carry orders, hold silence, enter rooms no noble wanted to enter, leave before names were counted, and accept that service was proof of loyalty only until loyalty needed a scapegoat. But no oath had taught her to tremble for a lie. She placed both hands on the trial blade. The court held its breath. Anya waited for burning. None came. The blade lay cold against her palms. Cold as winter stone. Cold as a thing pretending not to remember heat. Osric's face tightened. Grip it properly. I am. Press harder. Anya pressed until the edge cut the skin of her palm. Still no flame. A thin line of blood slid along the metal. The blade did not drink it. It recoiled from it. Alaric rose from the throne. His wolf shadow rose with him, slow and wary. Osric's voice sharpened. Majesty, do not approach until the judgment completes. It has completed nothing, Alaric said. He descended the throne steps, and the entire court parted for him. When he stopped before Anya, the cold authority around him felt like standing near a winter storm that had learned restraint. He looked at her hands. No burn, no smoke, only blood. Give me the blade, he said. Anya hesitated, not because she wanted to keep it, because something inside the metal had gone tense. Majesty, Osric warned. Alaric reached for the handle. The trial blade refused his hand. Silver fire burst from the hilt before his fingers could close. The blade melted, not downward, but upward, unraveling into liquid moonlight between Anya and the Royal Alpha. It did not burn her. It bent away from him. The court screamed. Alaric froze with his hand outstretched. Inside the silver fire, letters appeared beneath the surface of the oath metal. Not fresh letters. Buried ones. Anya read them before anyone else did. Sentence entered before touch. Osric vent bale. The silver fire opened wider. Another line surfaced beneath the first. Older and darker. The blade does not find guilt. It remembers what judgment named first. Then the oldest sentence split open below them all. The first liar was the blade. The trial blade had never judged truth. It had only obeyed the first sentence written against the accused. That was why the court went quiet after the silver fire spoke. Not because they understood it. Understanding would come later, if power allowed it to survive. The first thing they felt was fear, the cold, animal fear of people who had trusted a weapon to make their decisions clean, only to watch the weapon confess it had been taught where to burn. The melted blade hovered between Anya Bracken and Royal Alpha Alaric Stormholt. No longer metal. Not yet ash. Silver fire curled in the air like a living ribbon. And inside it, the buried words remained bright. Sentence entered before touch. The blade does not find guilt. It remembers what judgment named first. Anya's hands still did not burn. The cut across her palm bled slowly. One thin red line against moonlit skin. The fire bent around her blood as if it were something the metal did not know how to punish. High Judicator Osric Mavrin recovered first. Traitor smoke, he said. The words struck the hall with practiced authority. Nobles who had been leaning away from the fire now turned toward him, eager for shape, for explanation, for someone to put the impossible back inside law. Osric lit one hand toward the floating silver. The accused has contaminated judgment. Oath-bound servants are often used by enemy packs because their blood passes unnoticed through royal halls. The blade is not confessing. It is reacting. Anya looked at him. Reacting to what? Osric's eyes narrowed. To treason placed too close to sacred metal. Alaric's hand was still half raised where the blade had refused him. Slowly, he lowered it. His wolf shadow behind him had grown larger, darker. Its ears pinned back as it stared at the silver fire. You said the blade cannot be bribed. Alaric said. It cannot. You said it burns lies. It does. Anya's voice came quiet. Then why did it learn my sentence before it touched me? The black ribbon around her throat heated. She gasped before she could stop herself. Alaric saw it. So did the court. The stitched word traitor began to glow, not with fire but with silver-white heat. The thread tightened against her skin as if the ribbon had become a little collar of judgment. Anya lifted her bound hands toward it, but the oath cord around her wrists jerked tight, stopping her fingers before they could touch the word. The silver fire moved. A thin line of molten light reached from the broken blade toward the ribbon, and words formed in the air. Accusation ribbon accepted as verdict source. The court broke into whispers. Anya's stomach turned. So that was the trick. The blade had not listened to her answer. It had listened to the word already placed at her throat. It had not burned lies from flesh. It had burned whatever the court had named false before the accused could speak. She looked at Alaric. The betrayal in his face would have been almost satisfying if it were not so late. Do not look betrayed by the blade, she said. You let it speak before I did. The words hit him cleanly. His jaw tightened, but he did not deny it. Good. She needed that more than pity. Osric stepped between them, Robehem whispering across the moonstone. A court at war cannot wait for innocence to explain itself. Anya looked at him. There it was, the real faith beneath his law. Not truth. Speed. Osric turned so the whole court could hear. Truth is sacred, yes. But survival is older. When fear spreads through a pack, hesitation becomes bloodshed. A verdict that saves the pack is cleaner than an innocence that comes too late. Some nobles nodded. That frightened Anya more than Osric did. Alaric noticed. His eyes moved from the glowing ribbon to the nobles, then back to the melted blade. How many? Osric did not answer. The silver fire did. It unfolded like a long wound. Images opened inside it. A stable boy touching the trial blade with a ribbon reading spy around his wrist. A widow with murderer tied over her hair before she reached for the metal. An old gatekeeper branded coward before his hands ever touched judgment. Each time the blade burned. Each time the court accepted smoke as truth. Each time the first sentence had already been entered. The court had not asked the blade for truth. It had asked the blade to make the verdict smoke. Alaric's face hardened with every image. Anya watched him carefully. She would not let him become innocent just because he had learned the blade was not. Osric raised his voice. Old trials cannot be judged through broken fire. Those sentences held the pack together. Or hid what broke it, Anya said. The ribbon tightened again, cutting off the last word. Alaric stepped closer. Anya stepped back. Not far. Enough. His eyes flickered. He understood. Not permission yet, but distance. Remove the ribbon, he ordered. Osric went still. Majesty, the accusation ribbon is part of the active trial. Remove it. A guard moved behind Anya with trembling hands. He reached for the knot at her nape. The ribbon burned silver. He jerked back with a cry. The knot did not loosen. Instead, the word traitor sank deeper into the black cloth, and another line appeared in the melted blade. Verdict entered under crown seal. The hall went silent. Alaric turned toward Osric. Whose seal? Osric's face had gone pale beneath the moonfire lamps, but his voice remained controlled. All royal trials carry crown authority. That is not what I asked. The silver fire lowered toward Anya's throat. She felt the heat now not burning her, but revealing what had already been done to her before she entered the hall. At the center of the glowing ribbon, beneath the stitched word, a mark appeared. Not Osric's sigil, not the Judgment Council's moon-thread crest. A wolf crown, Stormholt's crown, not beside the verdict. Beneath it, Alaric stared at it. Anya breathed through the pressure at her throat and understood the next horror before anyone said it aloud. The blade had not sentenced her first. The crown had, and she was standing in the king's hall wearing his sentence around her throat. Alaric had not written the sentence himself. That was the first excuse the court tried to give him. It moved through the nobles without anyone speaking it aloud. A king could not inspect every trial. A crown could not personally weigh every servant's word, every gatekeeper's fear, every widow's blood, every soldier's missing hour. Stormholt was too large, too old, too wounded by war. Judgment had offices for a reason. Anya saw that excuse forming in their faces before Alaric did. The black ribbon around her throat tightened. The glowing word traitor pressed deeper into the cloth, and heat slid against her skin like a blade laid flat before the cut. She forced herself not to raise her bound hands again. The oath cord would only stop her, and she would not give the court the satisfaction of watching her struggle against a word they had chosen for her. Osric stepped into the silence. Majesty, he said carefully, the crown seal does not mean your hand entered the verdict. It means the royal trial system accepted the charge under Stormholt authority. Alaric's eyes did not leave the mark beneath the stitched word. Who entered it? Osric's expression remained calm. The judgment office. Before she touched the blade. That is procedure. Anya laughed once, though the ribbon burned her throat for it. The sound was small and rough, but it reached him. Alaric looked at her. She met his gaze. Then your crown condemns people faster than your mercy can reach them. The word struck him harder than accusation. Good. Accusation could be denied. Structure could not. The melted trial blade shifted in the air. Silver fire coiled tighter between them, and new words surfaced under the old. Royal authority accepted as truth source. The wolf shadow behind Alaric snarled. Not at Anya. At the crown mark. Osric lifted his chin. Authority must stand somewhere. If every accused servant may delay judgment until the king's personal mercy arrives, then trials become theater, and fear spreads faster than law. Fear already spread, Anya said. You only gave it a ribbon. The ribbon punished her. Heat flashed around her throat. This time it did more than tighten. The stitched words sank through the cloth and kissed her skin. Anya's breath caught. A thin silver mark formed beneath the T in traitor, not a burn yet, but the beginning of one. Alaric saw it. His face changed. He stepped toward her, and she stepped back again. Pain crossed his eyes. Not because she rejected his help, because he knew why. Do not touch the ribbon, Osric warned. If royal seal has entered verdict, a king's hand may bind it deeper. Alaric stopped. The court held its breath. Anya swallowed against the burning cloth. Convenient. Osric's gaze sharpened. Careful, girl. No, she said. Voice strained but clear. That is what your blade says when it runs out of truth. Convenient. The silver fire flared. For one breath, the trial blade looked almost like a blade again, long, narrow, beautiful, and sick with old obedience. Then it dissolved back into liquid moonlight and rode across the air. Verdict entered by judgment office. Activated under Stormholt crown. Accused voice received after verdict source. Alaric's jaw tightened. So her answer never mattered. Osric turned to him sharply. Her answer may still be weighed. After the blade burns her? After the blade confirms what the court must act upon. Anya looked at Alaric. The court had not asked the blade for truth. It had asked the blade to make the verdict smoke. He closed his eyes for half a heartbeat. When he opened them, the gray had hardened into something more dangerous than anger. Choice. Anya Bracken is not a traitor. The court erupted. The ribbon around Anya's throat cracked. Not fell. Cracked. The court had named her guilty too deeply for one true sentence to free her. A line split through the word traitor, and she sucked in air so sharply her knees nearly weakened. The silver mark on her skin stopped deepening, but it did not vanish. The oath cord around her wrist snapped loose enough for her fingers to move, but not enough to free her hands. Alaric noticed every part of it. Remove the verdict, he commanded. The silver fire answered before Osric could. False verdict cannot be revoked without naming first false trial. Osric went pale. Not startled. Afraid. Anya saw it and understood with a cold certainty. This had never been only about her. Her verdict was one link in a chain, and Alaric had cracked it by naming her innocent. But a cracked chain could still hold if no one touched the first ring. One innocent name cannot cleanse a blade trained on generations of useful guilt, she said. Osric's voice turned low. Majesty, old trial foundations are not relevant to an active breach. Alaric looked at him. They are if my crown is standing on them. The pack survived because those foundations held, or because no one alive was allowed to question them. The wolf shadow behind the throne rose higher, its massive head nearly level with Alaric's shoulder. It stared at the melting blade with a hunger that was not for blood. For record, Alaric turned to the silver fire. Name the first false trial. Osric moved so fast his robes snapped around him. Do not. The trial blade shook. The white bone altar behind it cracked from end to end. Anya's ribbon tightened again, fighting the question, but the crack in traitor held open. She forced breath through it, watching Alaric stand between the court's panic and the blade's oldest lie. Silver fire poured downward, not to the floor, into a memory. A woman appeared inside the flame, kneeling where Anya now stood. She wore a torn moon-white gown, her dark hair falling loose over one shoulder, her wrists bound in royal cord. Her face was proud, exhausted, and familiar in a way Anya did not understand until she saw Alaric go utterly still. Not because Anya knew her, because the king did. The first false verdict did not accuse a servant. It accused Alaric's mother, The woman in the silver fire did not look like a traitor. She looked like the reason Stormholt had needed one. She knelt where Anya stood, inside a memory made from melted oath metal, with a black ribbon around her throat and royal cord around her wrists. The ribbon did not say traitor. Not at first. Its letters shifted as if the court had argued over which word would make her easiest to kill. Wolf breaker, crown betrayer, pack traitor. Then the last word settled. Treason, mother. Anya felt her own ribbon tighten in answer. The cracked word traitor against her throat burned hotter, as if the blade had found a bridge between the woman in the memory and the servant standing before it now. She forced breath through the narrow space the crack had left her. Alaric did not move. His face had gone pale beneath the moonfire. Osric stepped forward quickly. Majesty, your mother's trial secured Stormholt's succession during the Winter Revolt. This is not relevant to an active servant charge. Alaric's eyes did not leave the woman. What was she accused of? Osric lowered his voice. Mercy that endangered the pack. That is not a charge. It was then. The silver fire answered. Accusation entered. Mercy toward enemy child. Refusal to name false heir. Concealment of breach witness. The court stirred uneasily. Anya looked at the memory of Queen Morel Stormholt, kneeling with her back straight despite the ribbon around her throat. She had Alaric's eyes. Not the color. The stillness. The terrible restraint of someone refusing to let pain choose her words. Inside the memory, an older man in judgment robes stood where Osric stood now. His hair was white, his face narrow, his hands calm. Elder Judicator Halvik Mavrin, Osric's predecessor, perhaps his blood, perhaps worse his teacher. Halvik held the trial blade before the queen. Touch judgment, and let the moon know whether you betrayed the crown. Morel looked not at him, but at a child behind the altar. A little boy, no older than 7, bruised, shaking, wrapped in a torn enemy cloak. The memory blurred before Anya could understand more. Alaric stepped toward the silver fire. Anya's ribbon strangled her for it. She choked, and he stopped instantly. The court saw. So did Osric. Anya dragged air into her lungs. Do not touch grief before you name the lie. Alaric turned toward her. Pain moved across his face, raw and unguarded for the first time. She did not soften. Not now. Grief could make him human. Only naming the verdict could make him responsible. Osric's voice cut in, cold and precise. If she was innocent, Majesty, your crown was born from a false verdict. The court went silent. There it was. Not a mother. A foundation. Not sorrow. Succession. Alaric looked from the kneeling woman to the crown mark still glowing beneath Anya's verdict ribbon. His wolf shadow moved behind him. Restless and huge. Its dark head lowered as if it wanted to tear the old memory apart with its teeth. But memories could not be killed cleanly. They had to be read. Show her verdict, Alaric said. Osric's face hardened. Majesty, show it. The trial blade shook inside the silver fire. The memory sharpened. Queen Morel placed her hand on the blade. It burned. Not slowly. Not with the hesitation of truth weighing guilt. It burned the instant her skin touched metal, as if the fire had been waiting before she arrived. The court in the memory gasped in perfect obedience. The ribbon around Anya's throat answered. The silver mark beneath traitor cut deeper into her skin. Anya's knees buckled, but she stayed standing. Alaric saw and took one step toward her. She lifted one hand. No. He stopped. That restraint cost him more than reaching would have. The silver fire wrote beneath Queen Morel's burning hand. Verdict entered before touch. Crown seal accepted. Judgment priority. Succession stability. Alaric's jaw clenched. Whose crown seal? The memory turned. On Morel's ribbon, beneath Treason Mother, a mark appeared. Stormholt's wolf crown. Beside it, smaller but clear, was the sigil of the old judgment office. Halvik Mavrin. Osric's family name rippled through the hall like a knife through silk. Osric lifted his chin. The Queen's mercy would have split the pack. Her death prevented civil war. A verdict that saves the pack is cleaner than innocence that arrives too late. Anya looked at him with burning throat and shaking hands. You said that about me. And I was correct both times. The melted blade flared silver white. For a moment, All 3 ribbons appeared together in the fire. Morel's, Anya's, and dozens more behind them, each with a verdict entered before touch. The blade had not begun lying with Anya. It had not even begun with Morel. But Morel was the trial that taught the blade to obey a useful verdict faster than a living voice. Alaric looked at the memory of his mother. Then at Anya. Then at the court that waited to see whether grief would make him private instead of responsible. His voice was low. The verdict against Queen Alaric Stormholt was false. The wolf throne cracked. Not loudly. Deeply. The antler crown above it split down one side, and every noble in the hall drew back as if the throne itself had inhaled. Anya's ribbon cracked again. Still not enough to fall. The silver fire opened beneath Morel's memory and revealed the little enemy child behind the altar. The one she had looked at before touching the blade. The child was holding a broken accusation ribbon in both hands. And the first false verdict had not killed Alaric's mother because she betrayed the crown. It killed her because she refused to let the blade burn a child. The child in the memory did not run when Queen Morel stepped before the blade. That was what made the court uneasy. Children fled danger when danger had a shape. This boy stayed behind the white bone altar with a broken accusation ribbon clutched in both hands, his face pale, his small body shaking so hard the torn enemy cloak slipped from one shoulder. He was not brave, not calm. He was simply too frightened to understand where safety was supposed to be. Queen Morel understood. That was why she had moved. Inside the silver fire, the old trial unfolded. Elder Judicator Halvik Mavrin held the trial blade toward the boy first. Around the child's wrist hung a ribbon with one word stitched in black thread. Wolf spy. Anya's throat burned in answer. Her own cracked ribbon tightened as if the blade wanted to drag the old verdict through her body. She forced herself to stay upright. If she fell now, Osric would call weakness proof. He would call pain confusion. Men like him always had a cleaner word ready. Alaric watched the boy in the memory. His hands were fists at his sides. Osric spoke before grief could become action. The child was an enemy witness during the Winter Revolt. His testimony could have shattered the succession. Queen Morel's mercy endangered every loyal house. Anya looked at him. What did he witness? Osric's eyes sharpened. Irrelevant. The melted blade answered. Relevant. The silver fire brightened. The boy's memory opened inside the trial memory. And the hall saw what he had seen. A narrow chamber beneath Stormholt's old keep. A council table. A dying king. And 2 sealed heir documents. One bore Alaric's name. One bore another child's. Older, hidden, already dead, before the court ever learned he had existed. Anya did not understand the politics. But she understood the shape. A disputed crown. A dead heir. A child witness. A judgment office needing silence. Alaric's face went still in a way that frightened her more than rage. He saw the succession records, Osric replied. He saw enough to destroy the pack. No, Anya said. He saw enough to make the pack ask questions. Her ribbon burned. The silver mark at her throat deepened. Alaric moved one step toward her, then stopped himself before she had to refuse him. Good. He was learning that protection could become another verdict if it arrived before consent. He turned back to the fire. Why was my mother judged instead of the boy? The trial blade shuddered. Havoc's voice from the memory answered before the writing did. Because a queen's guilt closes a court faster than a child's death. The court inhaled. Osric went white with fury. The silver fire wrote. Substitution verdict entered. Alaric Stormholt accepted as traitor source. Child witness preserved under sealed silence. Anya stared at the words. Preserved. She hated that word more every time power used it. The child had not been saved. He had been kept alive somewhere under silence. Proof stored for a day when someone might need it. Just as Anya had been kept useful by oath. Just as accused servants had been burned so trials could look certain. Alaric's voice was low. Where is he? The silver fire flickered. Osric stepped forward. Majesty, opening a sealed witness line under succession law will unsettle every oath sworn after your mother's death. Where is he? The fire wrote one line. Witness life transferred to oath metal custody. Anya's stomach tightened. Oath metal custody. The words felt colder than death. The trial blade's melted form rippled. and inside its silver body, something darker surfaced. A thin black thread running through the metal from tip to hilt. Not decoration, not forging pattern, a child's silence. The boy's broken ribbon had been melted into the blade. Anya understood too fast. The blade had not only been trained by false verdicts, it had been fed by them. Osric's voice came hard. A witness who cannot be released cannot be bribed. Oath metal preserves what kingdoms cannot afford to let speak. Anya looked at the floating fire. You put the child inside the blade. We preserved the source of instability. You made a weapon out of his silence. The blade screamed, not loudly, deeply, like metal bending around a voice it had swallowed for 17 years. Alaric staggered as if the sound had struck his bones. His wolf shadow snapped its jaws at the air, and the silver antler crown above the throne cracked another inch. Anya's ribbon tightened until spots of black edged her vision. She forced the words out anyway. Do not make your mother innocent by making the child useful. Alaric looked at her. Pain moved through him, then understanding. Grief could have let him stop at Morel. He could have named his mother innocent and kept the witness buried for the sake of his crown. He could have mourned privately while the blade remained publicly holy. Instead, he faced the trial blade. Release the witness record. Osric's control broke. If you release it, Majesty, every verdict tied to oath metal custody may reopen. Alaric's jaw tightened. Then, they were never closed. The melted blade split. The black thread inside it pulsed like a vein. A small voice, hoarse from years of metal, whispered through the hall. I was not the first. Anya went cold. The silver fire darkened beneath the child's words. Another memory opened below Morel's trial. Older. Deeper. Buried beneath all the others. A battlefield after the first Stormholt War. A kneeling wolf. A blade not yet forged. And the first false execution waiting to become metal. The silver fire did not show the trial blade first. It showed the hunger that needed one. A battlefield opened beneath the memory of Queen Morel's trial. Older than the wolf throne. Older than the white bone altar. Older than the neat phrases stitched into Osric's robes. Stormholt's first war had ended. But peace had not yet learned how to stand. Bodies lay beneath a gray dawn. Broken banners dragged through mud. Wolves limped between the dead, sniffing for kin, and finding ash instead. At the center of the field knelt a man with his hands bound. He was not dressed like an enemy. That was the first thing Anya noticed. His cloak bore the old Stormholt mark, a black wolf beneath a crescent moon. His armor was cracked, his face bloodied, but he held himself upright with the last stubborn dignity of someone who had served too long to beg badly. Before him stood the first royal alpha, Alaric Stormholt. The court knew the name. Some nobles lowered their heads by instinct. Alaric did not. He watched his ancestor stand before the bound man, and his face looked carved from cold understanding. Osric spoke quickly. Founding records are symbolic. War memories exaggerate guilt and loyalty. This is not a trial record. The melted blade answered. First verdict source. Anya's ribbon tightened. The word traitor bit deeper into her skin, as if every old sentence wanted to keep the first one buried. She swayed, but stayed standing. Her fingers had enough looseness now to curl, but the oath cord still held her wrists together. Alaric looked at her throat. Does it hurt when the record opens? Yes. The answer came too plainly. His jaw tightened. Why? Anya looked at the silver fire. Because your blade still thinks an accused body is the page. That landed. Even Osric did not speak over it. The memory sharpened. The bound man raised his head. I did not betray the pack. His voice was low, hoarse, alive. Alaric Stormholt looked toward the gathered survivors behind him. Wolves hungry for someone to blame, nobles trembling over land they had nearly lost, commanders needing one clean cause for a war that had been messy, stupid, and full of mistakes. You opened the southern pass, Arvin said. I opened it for children fleeing the fire. For enemy blood. For children. A murmur moved through the memory crowd. Anya felt it like an echo of her own court. The same hunger. The same need for guilt, to be simple enough to survive. The bound man looked at the first alpha. If mercy is treason, then name it honestly. The silver fire flickered around those words. Alaric's wolf shadow lowered its head. Osric's voice cut through the hall. Enough. A founding accusation is not subject to servant interpretation. Anya turned slightly. Then let it interpret itself. The blade screamed. The sound came from nowhere and everywhere. From the silver fire, from the altar, from the ribbon at her throat, from old burns in the memories of the court. The white bone altar cracked wider, and beneath it, a seam of black metal appeared. Not forged yet. Waiting. The memory continued. Arvin did not have a trial blade in his hand. He had a simple war sword. He placed it under the bound man's chin. Lior Cadden, he said, by need of the pack, you are named traitor. The word struck before the sword did. Lior closed his eyes. Anya felt the ribbon burn, as if the ancient verdict had passed through her throat on its way to him. The crowd in the memory exhaled with relief. Not because truth had come, because blame had. Lior opened his eyes again. A verdict that needs my innocence buried will never stop eating. Then Arvin killed him. The silver fire did not show blood. It showed what happened after. Lior's broken oath ring fell into the mud. His oath had not been false, so the ring did not blacken. It stayed bright. Painfully bright. A loyal oath left behind by a man named Traitor. Arvin picked it up. The first elder judicator beside him whispered, "If the oath remains true, they will question the verdict." "Then make the verdict stronger than the oath," Arvin said. The memory shifted to a forge beneath the first keep. Lior's oath ring was melted with moon silver, war, ash, and the recorded word traitor. The metal resisted. The forge fire turned white. Someone screamed, though no body stood inside the flame. The first trial blade took shape. Not from truth. From an innocent oath forced to carry the name that killed it. Anya could hardly breathe. The court had not forged a blade to find lies. It had forged a blade to keep the first lie alive. Alaric stared at the molten memory. All this time, Osric stepped in front of him. All this time, the blade held the pack together. Anya's voice came ragged. By burning anyone, the court named before they spoke. A court cannot survive if every old verdict is reopened. No, she said. Your court cannot. Osric's face darkened. Alaric turned toward the silver fire. Name Lior Cadden's verdict false. The wolf throne shook. Osric went white. Majesty, if you name the founding verdict false, the trial blade loses sacred standing. Good. The judgment council loses lawful continuity. Good. Your crown loses every execution it inherited from the blade. Alaric looked at Anya, not for comfort, for the cost. She gave it to him without mercy. If you stop here, my throat carries the limit of your courage. His face changed. No anger, no denial, only the wound of being seen exactly where he still wanted to hesitate. Then he faced the oldest fire. The verdict against Lior Cadden was false. The black metal seam beneath the altar split open. Anya's ribbon cracked again. But this time, a thread fell loose from it and turned to silver ash before touching the floor. The melted blade twisted in the air, losing its beautiful shape. Inside the silver fire, Lior Cadden's voice rose from the first forged lie. Then break what my oath was forced to become. Osric stared at Anya. His fear finally became clear. Not because the blade chose her, because it could not survive what her hands might do. The trial blade reformed for one breath, whole and trembling, then lowered itself toward Anya's loosened wrists. Oath metal breaker detected. And every old burn mark in the court began to glow. The old scars did not shine like healing. They shone like witnesses forced awake. Across the dragon, no. The wolf court, Anya thought through pain. Because even her mind wanted to run from this place, silver light rose from hands, wrists, throats, palms, and forearms. Not fresh wounds. Old ones. Blade burns long covered by gloves, sleeves, jewels, titles, and silence. A guard near the eastern door stared at his palm as a crescent-shaped scar appeared under his skin. A council clerk clutched his wrist. A noblewoman in blue silk turned away too late. As a silver mark glowed at the base of her throat, even one of Osric's younger judges lowered his hand. But not before the court saw the burn across his fingers. The trial blade had marked more than criminals. It had marked anyone useful enough to suffer quietly. Anya stood before them with the loosened oath cord still around her wrists and the cracked ribbon burning at her throat. The silver fire of the blade hovered near her hands, trembling, no longer proud enough to look sacred. Oath metal breaker detected. The words remained in the air. Osric recovered with frightening speed. Destroyer, he said. The court seized the simpler word at once. Breaker. Destroyer. Forbidden blood. Old curse. Anya stared at the melted blade. I did not ask it to call me anything. No, Osric said. That is why the old names are dangerous. They wait until law weakens, then crawl out and pretend they were truth all along. Alaric turned on him. What is an oath metal breaker? Osric's mouth tightened. The silver fire answered first. One who breaks weapons forged from false judgment. Only when the original oath is named. Only when the false verdict is seen. Only when the accused refuses ownership of the weapon. Anya read the last line twice. Refuses ownership. Good. The blade was not choosing her. It was afraid she would not claim it. Osric lifted both hands, voice rising for the court. Majesty. If she touches that metal now, she may shatter every trial tied to its authority. Exiles will return. Executions will be challenged. Noble inheritances will reopen. War punishments will lose standing. She is not innocence. She is collapse. Anya's ribbon tightened hard enough to steal her next breath. Alaric saw her knees weaken. He did not reach. His restraint looked like agony. That mattered more than comfort. Anya forced air through the cracked word at her throat. He keeps telling you what will collapse. He has not once asked what was built out of bodies. The silver scars across the court brightened. Several nobles looked away. Alaric stepped toward the white bone altar instead of toward Anya. The trial court is suspended. Osric went still. The wolf throne behind Alaric groaned. Majesty, Osric said softly, you do not have that authority while an active verdict remains under crown seal. I am the crown. No, Osric replied. You are its current bearer. The seal is older than your mercy. The words cut the hall open. Anya looked at Alaric. There it was again. The system offering him an excuse. The seal was old. The office was old. The blade was old. The crown had inherited it all. He could stand inside inherited cruelty and call himself trapped. He did not. Then let the current bearer answer for what it carries, Alaric said. The wolf throne cracked from seat to claw. Silver antlers above it shuddered. Alaric's wolf shadow snarled, then lowered its massive head as if bracing for pain. The crown mark beneath Anya's ribbon pulsed once, and the stitched word traitor split wider. Not free. Vidar. The melted blade lowered toward her hands. Anya did not take it. Not yet. She looked into the silver fire, where Lior Kadan's first false oath still glowed like a buried coal. If I touch it, she asked. What happens to my verdict? The blade answered. False active verdict will seek bearer. Anya went cold. Osric smiled then. Small. Cruel. There is your answer. The blade cannot break without placing unfinished judgment somewhere. If you break oath metal while still under active accusation, every false sentence it releases may enter the open verdict around your throat. Alaric's face darkened. You knew. I know law, Osric said. Unlike grief, it does not flatter the guilty. Anya understood the trap. If she refused, Osric would say she feared truth. If she touched the blade, the old false judgments might pour into the ribbon still named against her. One innocent body could become the chamber where generations of useful guilt tried to hide. She looked at Alaric. Do not take the ribbon from me by force, she said. His jaw clenched. I know. Do not name me under your protection. I know. Then say what the crown did before I touch what the blade became. The court held its breath. Alaric faced the hall. My crown entered a verdict before the accused spoke. The ribbon around Anya's throat cracked again. My court used a blade trained by false judgment. The silver fire flared. My throne survived because old guilt was made useful. The wolf throne split down the back. Osric shouted, Enough. Alaric did not stop, and Anya Bracken is not the bearer of that guilt. For the first time, the ribbon loosened enough for Anya to draw a full breath. Not free. Enough. She reached for the blade. The silver fire did not burn her fingers. It curled around them like cold water trying to remember metal. Beneath the fire, something black and hard remained. The first oath. Ring melted into the weapon. Liar Cadden's voice rose. I opened the pass for children. Anya held the blade with both hands. Then your oath was not false, she whispered. The blade cracked. Every old burn mark in the court flashed silver white. For one breath, Anya thought it would break. Then Osric slammed his palm against the white bone altar. Judgment debt invoked. The silver fire turned black at the edges. The cracked ribbon around Anya's throat snapped tight. From every glowing burn in the court, old verdicts rose like smoke and rushed toward her. Spy, Moder, coward, wolf-breaker, TRAITOR. Alaric lunged forward, but the wolf throne seized his shadow and dragged it back. Anya opened her mouth to scream, and the trial blade spoke through her throat in Lior Kadan's voice. Name the children. The old verdicts stopped just before they entered Anya's skin. Not because they spared her, because the blade had demanded something older than guilt. Spy. Murderer. Coward. Wolf-breaker. Traitor. The words circled her throat like black smoke, each one searching for the crack in her ribbon, each one ready to pour into the space where the court had already written her as useful. Anya could feel them pressing against her breath. Not burning yet. Waiting. The trial blade still rested in her hands, half metal, half silver fire, its cracked body trembling around the black core of Lior Kadan's melted oath ring. Alaric strained against the throne shadow, holding his wolf back. His face was pale with fury, but his eyes stayed on Anya, not on the weapon. That mattered. If he looked only at the blade, he would see an artifact to control. If he looked only at her pain, he might try to own the rescue. He forced out one word. Children? Osric's expression had hardened into something colder than anger. Enemy blood evacuated through an unlawful pass. Irrelevant to Stormholt judgment. Anya's throat tightened. The smoke verdicts moved closer. No, she said, the word scraping through her. Not enemy blood. The blade shook in her hands. Lior's voice came again. Quieter now. As if speaking through years of metal had cost him even memory. Names. The silver fire turned inward. A battlefield passage appeared inside the broken blade. Not the place where Lior died, but the pass he had opened. A narrow snow road between black pines. Smoke behind it. Fire spreading across low tents. Small figures running through ash, wrapped in torn cloaks and blankets, some carrying younger children on their backs. The court watched. And still, some faces remained hard. That was when Anya understood how deeply the blade had trained them. Even seeing children flee fire, they looked first for category. Enemy. Illegitimate. Risk. Problem. Osric stepped before the memory. War children have no standing in a royal trial. They were not Stormholt born. Alaric's voice came rough. Did Lior open the pass to attack us? The blade answered in silver script. Pass opened for evacuation. No enemy riders entered through Lior Kadan's gate. Anya's ribbon cracked again. One of the smoke verdicts dissolved. Spy vanished first. She breathed, but only a little. Osric saw it and struck the altar again. Judgment debt remains. One correction cannot release generations of sentence. Anya looked at him. You keep saying generations as if time makes a lie mature. A few nobles flinched. Good. Let truth bruise the room before it healed anything. Alaric pulled against the shadow binding his wolf. Open the child record. Osric turned sharply. Majesty, there is no child record. The blade flared. False. Osric went still. The silver fire wrote another line. Mercy ledger sealed beneath founding crown. Alaric's face changed. Note shock. Recognition. A crown always had ledgers no king was taught to ask for. If I open it, he said, not to Osric but to the blade. What breaks? The answer came slowly. Founding war purity. Stormholt first victory hymn. Lior Kadan traitor standing. Trial blade sacred origin. Osric's voice dropped. And with that, Majesty, every noble house that built honor on the first war will turn on you before dawn. Alaric looked at Anya. The old verdicts still circled her throat. Her hands trembled around the blade. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes were steady in a way that made him look ashamed of every second he had waited. Anya saw the question forming. She stopped it. "Do not ask me if your crown can afford truth." His jaw tightened. "Ask the children if they could afford the lie." The hall went very quiet. Alaric turned back to the silver fire. "Open the mercy ledger." The wolf throne cracked beneath the shadow's hold. His wolf shadow tore one paw free, then another. Not to attack, but to stand. The silver antlers above the throne split again, and the black crown mark beneath Anya's ribbon burned so bright she nearly fell. Still, the ledger opened. Names spilled into the air. Not grand names, not noble names, small ones. Evan, Mara, Talon, Sira, Bran, Hessa, Orin, Little Vay, Annette, Kor. Each name struck a smoke verdict. Murderer broke. Coward broke. Wolf breaker broke. Anya gasped as pressure left her throat in sharp pieces. The ribbon was still there. Still cracked. Still dangerous. But the old judgments were thinning now. Losing places to hide. Lior's memory sharpened. He stood at the pass, holding the gate while children ran past him. A little girl stumbled. He lifted her. An older boy tried to go back for someone. Lior turned him around and said, "Live first. Grieve after." Then the memory shifted to the battlefield. Arvin Stormholt naming him traitor. The crowd needing blame. The oath ring refusing to blacken. The forge swallowing loyal metal. Anya looked at the blade in her hands. Your oath was not betrayal. The black core cracked. Osric moved. Not toward Alaric. Toward Anya. He drew a thin judgment spike from his sleeve, silver black and sharp, meant not for killing but for sealing mouths. He drove it toward the cracked ribbon at her throat. Alaric's wolf shadow lunged, but too late. Anya did not step back. She turned the broken blade in both hands and met the spike with its edge. Silver fire exploded between them. The judgment spike melted. The trial blade did not. Instead, its cracked body rang once like a bell struck underwater. Oath metal breaker condition met. False weapon may be broken by named oath. Osric stared at the words. So did Anya. Her hands tightened around the blade. She understood the cost before it was written. To break the weapon, she could not merely say Lior was innocent. She had to speak the oath his death had been forced to betray. The blade opened one final memory. Lior Cadden stood before the pass with fire behind him and children ahead of him. He pressed his bright oath ring against the gate and spoke the oath the court had erased. I open no road for conquest. I open it for the living. Anya repeated it. The blade screamed. And beneath her hands, the sacred trial blade split from hilt to tip. The blade did not fall apart like broken metal. It opened. Silver fire spilled from the split hilt, and every old verdict trapped inside it rushed outward in a storm of broken words. Spy. Coward. Murderer. Wolfbreaker. Traitor. Some dissolved the moment they touched the air. Others clung to the glowing scars across the court, searching for the bodies they had once burned. Anya nearly dropped the weapon. What remained in her hands was no longer a sacred blade. It was a cracked spine of oath metal, silver fire leaking through the fracture where Lior Cadden's oath ring had been forced to carry a lie for generations. The ribbon around her throat loosened. Not enough. Never enough. The word traitor was split almost in half now, but the Stormholt crown mark beneath it still burned against her skin. The blade could break false metal, but the crown seal had entered her verdict before she touched judgment. That mark belonged to Alaric's throne, and thrones did not let go because one weapon confessed. Across the hall, old burn marks flared and faded. A guard sank to his knees, staring at his palm as the word spy vanished from a scar he had hidden for years. A noblewoman sobbed once when the burn at her throat released a name that was not hers. A council clerk whispered, "My brother," and covered his face. The court had become a room full of proof no one wanted to hold. Osric Mavrin stood before the cracked altar, breathing hard for the first time. Then he smiled. It was small, bloodless, and terrible. Now you see why judgment requires containment. Anya lifted her head. You call this containment? I call it civilization, Osric said. Without a blade strong enough to hold fear, fear runs into every house. Alaric stepped beside the broken silver fire, not close enough to touch Anya, not far enough to pretend distance was innocence. His wolf shadow stood behind him, freed from the throne's grip but trembling as if every old verdict had passed through its bones. "The trial court is suspended," Alaric said. The hall erupted. Osric's voice rose over the panic. "You cannot suspend what holds your borders together. I can suspend what burns people before they speak." "No," Osric said. "You can hate it. You can grieve it. You can break one pretty piece of it in public. But if you suspend trial judgment, every exile returns with a claim. Every executed house demands record. Every war prisoner becomes a wound with heirs. The rival packs will not see mercy. They will see weakness opening its own throat." Anya looked at Alaric. This was the test. Not whether he could be horrified by the blade. Horror was easy once the silver fire made it beautiful. The test was whether he would still name the lie when the truth threatened things he needed. The crown mark on her ribbon burned hotter. Alaric saw her flinch. Osric saw him see it. "Her verdict remains active," the judicator said softly. "Break the old blade all you like, Majesty. Her ribbon was entered under your crown. To remove it, the crown must either confirm her guilt, transfer the verdict to another bearer, or admit that Stormholt authority itself issued false judgment." Alaric's face went still. Anya understood the trap before the court did. If he confirmed her guilt, she would burn. If he transferred it, someone else would carry the lie meant for her. If he admitted the crown issued false judgment, every verdict entered under the same authority could be challenged. Osric turned to the nobles. "A king may pity one servant. A king may mourn his mother. But a king cannot place one girl's throat above a kingdom's legal spine." Anya's hands tightened around the cracked blade. "Do not answer him as if I am yours to weigh," she said. Alaric looked at her. Pain crossed his face. Good. Pain meant he had heard the possession inside the rescue before it left his mouth. "What do you ask?" he said. The court went silent at that. Anya swallowed against the burning mark. "Do not save me by moving the verdict. Do not make someone else useful because I became visible." His jaw clenched. "Then I name the crown." Osric's smile vanished. Alaric turned toward the hall. "My crown issued a false judgment against Anya Bracken before she spoke." The wolf throne cracked again. The silver antlers above it split down the center. Anya's ribbon snapped open at the back. For one glorious breath, she thought it would fall. Instead, the black cloth hung around her throat in two broken ends, still attached by the crown mark burned against her skin. The melted blade rode in the air. "False crown judgment acknowledged. Root seal remains." Alaric stared at the words. "Root seal?" Osric closed his eyes for half a heartbeat. Anya saw it. Fear. Not for the court. For a secret. The cracked blade trembled in her hands, and Leor Cadan's voice rose from the silver fire. The first crown seal was not placed on law. The floor beneath the wolf throne opened in a ring of moonlight. Inside the circle, another memory surfaced. Not the battlefield. Not Morel's trial. Not Anya's ribbon, but a hidden chamber under the throne where a child's accusation ribbon lay beneath a silver crown. Alaric's wolf shadow snarled. Anya's throat went cold. The ribbon in the memory was small. Too small for an adult. The letters on it had been scraped away, until only one word remained. "Heir," Osric whispered. "Do not open that." The broken blade answered him by splitting wider, and beneath the first crown seal, the hidden child's name began to write itself in silver fire. The silver fire did not write the hidden child's name quickly. It fought for each letter. The little ribbon beneath the crown seal trembled in the memory under the wolf throne, its scraped word hair glowing like a wound someone had tried to sand smooth. Around it, old moonstone walls appeared, damp and narrow, sealed away beneath royal floors, where no court witness had ever been allowed to stand. Anya held the broken trial blade with both hands. The crown mark on her throat burned colder now. Not fire. Claim. Alaric stared into the memory as if the floor had opened beneath his whole life. "Who was he?" Osric's voice came sharp. "A dead complication." The words destroyed the last softness in the hall. Silver fire struck the hidden ribbon. The name surfaced. Tavian Stormholt. The court froze. Alaric's face went empty. Not because he knew the name. Because he did not. The broken blade wrote the rest. Firstborn son of King Marin Stormholt. Removed from succession record. Accused as false heir under root crown seal. Anya's breath caught. The smaller ribbon in the memory had not belonged to an enemy child after all. It had belonged to a boy erased so another succession could stand clean. Alaric's succession. His mother's trial. The trial blade. All of it had been tied into one old wound. Osric lifted both hands. The boy was sickly. Hidden. Politically impossible. If his name had survived, Stormholt would have broken before the winter revolt ended. Queen Morelle protected the wrong witness. The judgment office protected the pack. Anya looked at him. You protected a throne from a child. A throne protects thousands. A lie protected itself. The blade shuddered in her hands. Alaric turned toward Osric. His voice was low, stripped of thunder. Did my mother know? Osric smiled without warmth. She knew enough to become dangerous. The silver memory moved. Queen Morelle appeared again, kneeling before the trial blade. But now the hidden chamber showed behind her. The enemy-cloaked boy she had saved was not the heir. He was the child witness who had seen Tavian's ribbon placed under the crown seal. Morelle had refused to let the trial blade burn him because burning him would bury Tavian forever. So the court burned her instead. Anya's ribbon tightened one last time, trying to drag the root seal deeper into her skin. She tasted silver in the back of her throat. Alaric stepped toward her. She lifted the broken blade between them. No. He stopped. Her voice shook, but did not fail. If you come to me now, come as the king who names the lie, not as the son who wants the pain to end. His eyes closed for one breath. When they opened, grief was still there, but command had changed shape. He turned to the court. My crown was built over a hidden child's false verdict. The wolf throne split from claw to crown. Nobles screamed as silver light poured from the crack beneath it. Old trial ribbons rose from the floor, hundreds of them, black and gray and moon-faded, each carrying words that had once seemed final. Spe, TRAITOR, coward, false heir, wolf-breaker, morderer. Osric shouted over the chaos. If you finish this, Majesty, your right to rule is no longer clean. Alaric looked at him. It was never clean. The words broke the root seal. The crown mark on Anya's throat cracked open. She nearly fell from the sudden release of air. The two broken ends of the black ribbon slid from her skin and dropped to the moonstone floor, where they curled like dead snakes and turned to ash. Her wrists came free next. The oath cord snapped without drama. Anya did not feel powerful. She felt painfully alive. The trial blade in her hands pulsed once, waiting, not asking her to judge, asking whether she would finish breaking what had been made from a false oath. Leor Cadden's voice rose from the split metal. I open no road for conquest. I open it for the living. Queen Morelle's voice followed. No blade may burn a child to protect a crown. The unknown boy's voice came last, small but clear. My name was Tavian Stormholt. Anya closed her hands around the broken oath metal. I return every false verdict to the one who wrote it, she whispered. Not to the accused. The trial blade shattered. Silver fire burst upward, not as destruction, but as release. Old burn marks across the court opened and emptied. Words lifted from skin, from records, from ribbons, from memories sealed too long beneath royal law. Some people sobbed. Some recoiled. Some looked furious to be made uncertain after years of comfort. Osric screamed. Every verdict he had preserved turned toward him. Not all guilt. Record. His robes caught silver script from collar to hem. Keeper of useful guilt. Inheritor of root seal. Guardian of verdict before truth. He fell before the cracked altar. Not burned, not dead, but stripped of the language that had made cruelty sound necessary. Alaric looked at the guards. Bind him. Osric laughed from the floor. With what law? Anya answered before the king could. With witness law. The guards looked to Alaric. Alaric looked to Anya. Then the guards obeyed. Not because she owned the court. Because, for the first time in generations, the court was afraid to contradict a record while it was still glowing. Dawn touched the high windows. The wolf throne stood cracked but not fallen. The antler crown above it hung broken on one side. Alaric removed the silver crown from his brow and set it on the altar beside the shattered blade. He turned to Anya and stopped several steps away. "What do you require?" he asked. The question felt heavier than rescue. Anya looked at the ash at her feet, where Traitor had once held her throat. "Open every trial record entered before touch. It will break houses." Then they were already broken. He bowed his head. "And after?" She looked at him carefully. "Not as savior, not as enemy. As a man standing inside, inherited judgment, and choosing, at last, not to hide inside it. Ask before your mercy reaches for someone your crown wounded first." Pain crossed his face. Then devotion, dangerous because it had learned restraint. "I will." Anya walked out of the trial hall with her throat bare, her hands free, and the first honest light of morning on her skin. Behind her, Royal Alpha Alaric Stormholt followed 3 steps back, carrying no blade. Only the weight of every verdict he had agreed to read.